Hey guys, what's going on? My name is DJ Fuji. As you know, I'm here with a great friend of mine, Vince Lin. Vince is the author and founder of what I would consider this definitive style guide, the kind of resource for guys called Seduce with Style. For those of you guys that are in my coaching program, you know that this is the book that we use as kind of a baseline to improve your personal sense of style. I contribute a little bit to the book, and obviously, I've gone through it. It's really been kind of the best resource that I've seen for improving your sense of style and fashion and everything. And I think that's super important as an overall, because remember, this idea of becoming attraction is a holistic process. It's not just a one-trick pony thing. So I'm here with Vince. Vince is also a former Google employee, former dork, I would say, a guy that went from, kind of a Google employee, your very stereotypical Google employee, into a guy that eventually turned into a model, an entrepreneur, and a guy who improved his sense of style to the point where people were coming to him now as an expert in this and asking for his advice in transforming themselves as well. So today we want to talk about the kind of the world of modeling and what he's seen from that, dating really attractive women, what that's like, and the experiences on that, and improving your own sense of style. So Vince, welcome to the call.
Hey, thanks, man. Thank you for the great introduction and the great friend category. I really appreciate it. It's an awesome category to be in.
Yeah, definitely, man. So tell us a little bit about yourself, especially with I'm really interested in kind of the background of how you got really good at style, because that's something that, a lot of guys work on a lot of different aspects of their lives and dating lives, but very few guys, even the guys that are good at this, really nail down the style thing, because it's a very hard thing to do, and there's a lot of barriers to that. So tell us a little bit about that background.
Yeah, sure. I think, for me, I had really interesting Asian parents, and so they weren't super stylish or anything. My dad was always well dressed for work, but I never really learned how to dress up for social situations. And so it's almost like if someone doesn't teach you how to dress well or how social status matters in a school environment, you never really pick it up. And so for me, I was kind of dorky looking all the way till, after college. So the one thing I learned in college was how to wear suits properly, just because I went to a business-oriented university. And so I learned how to tie a tie. I learned how to, wear like leather shoes for business presentations, but that was as far as I went. I never knew how to wear things in an attractive way. So as I started learning pickup, I think every guy experiences this. I'm learning, maybe it's just me. I was learning pickup, and I'm like, okay, they say that your game is the only thing that matters. It doesn't matter how you look, right? And looking back on it, it was really good marketing. But in my back of my mind, I was thinking, you know what? The way you look does matter. Obviously, you can't change your height or you can't change certain things, but I think your image is always really important. And so for me, that was something that I try to focus on. In addition to learning, actually learning how to talk to girls, I also worked on like how I looked. And for a long time, I was trying to figure out on my own, and there were a lot of mistakes that were made. And overall, I was moving in the right direction, but I definitely looked whack a couple of times. During those 2 years.
I think that's most of us, dude, in just our kind of our evolution. Like I remember wearing some of the most ridiculous things, just experimenting and seeing if things work.
Well, the funny thing is, like, I thought I looked good.
Right now, I'm sure I did too.
You know what? I look pretty good. I've never wore, a dress shirt with a black tie before, and at the moment, that's how I felt and how I behaved. Looking back, I was like, you know what? That was a little bit off. That was just a little bit off, but it's okay. At least I was trying and I was doing different things. So.
Right. Yeah. Now that I guess that style evolution eventually turned into you modeling yourself, right?
Yeah, that's right. So I ended up having pretty good style like 5 years into it, and then it's kind of like so in my on my website Seduce with Style, I have a style evolution chart, and basically it's like phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. I got to a point where I was phase 3, a little bit phase 4. Phase 4 is when you can develop your own style trends, and I got to that point a little bit. But really, my modeling career started when first of all, like anyone can actually meet models if you just volunteer for the local fashion week. You'll be fine. So I volunteered for the local fashion week. I saw what the models were like, and then I promised myself that next year I would actually go back to Fashion Week, but this time I would go back as a model. And so that was my goal, and I kind of fulfilled it. But my first gig was I was sick that day, and my friend pushed me to go to the audition, and I went there and I got the job. But it was
What's that audition like? Like in my head, right? The audition is like they just have you walk up and down a catwalk, and then like you're like, all right, good, you're hired.
Yeah, pretty much, but it's a little harder than that. So, this is like a personal fact about me. Like, maybe it's kind of funny, but I watch like a lot of modeling shows, so I like girls. But
Okay.
like I've already known what the casting will be like. Basically, they'll ask you a couple of questions. They will try to get a sense of your personality, and then for runway shows in particular, they want to see how you walk, right? So they know how your body looks just based on your frame, and then from there on, for male models, they'll ask you to do a walk up and down the whatever you're casting. And my walk was pretty good. So when I did my walk, they were like, I could tell like the energy change in the room, and they were like, okay, this guy knows how to walk. Most guy models can't walk that well, and so I think from a lot of watching, like observing, I had a pretty good walk, and I think that's why they gave me that particular job.
Okay.
Yeah.
In the selection process, is it different for guys than it is for girls, or is it kind of the same things they're looking for?
Obviously, the physical attributes are different. So
Right. But I mean, is the selection process? Do they consider different aspects to that?
well, first of all, there are a lot more girls than guys that usually go to model castings, and so when you're lining up, usually the girls lines all the way out the door, and then you'll see probably like 5 or 6 guys.
Right.
At least in my city. If you go to LA, it might be different.
Right.
If you go to New York, it might be different. But the guys are usually few and far in between. So
How much? So I'm kind of curious about this. How much are physical attributes like absolutely necessary? Like, do you have to be super good looking for this? Like, do you have to have a certain thing? Like, is there a certain height limitation? Like how restrictive is like on a girl side? Like, if you're a girl but you're really cute but you're like 5'1", it's not gonna happen, right? Like, you might get like a Walmart shoot, right? But like, you're never gonna be on a catwalk. There's just like a height limitation there, right? For guys, are there certain limitations with maybe jawline or height or looks or ethnicity or whatever?
yeah, sure. I mean, depends on what you do. For runway shows, the height is a big one. It also depends on how like there's different levels of models. Like my town, I would consider like a B list like modeling town. So you can get in without meeting those physical requirements. But usually height for runway shows, height is one of the big ones. For your cheekbones and your bone structure, that's really based on personal taste, I think, a little bit more so than exact requirements. And you have to be not fat. So you can still be a little bit skinny as a guy get in, but you have to be not overweight. And I think those requirements go up as you get into like the A-list towns like LA and New York. You have to be super muscular in shape, and you have to have, in addition to that, you have to have a certain look that fits a particular narrative in the marketplace. So for me, I realized that my advantage was that there weren't many tall Asian guys above 6 foot. And I have a pretty good body frame, and so that I use that to my advantage. Every guy's gonna have different advantages and disadvantages, and you have to kind of find out what your niche is. With the internet, there are a lot of internet models now, especially girls that are less than desirable height, and they do just fine. They work full time. So I think the industry's changing a little bit, but as far as the runway shows go, it's still a little bit traditional, and so there's more requirements there.
Okay.
The good news is once you get in, dude, like backstage, prepping and everything, you're basically swarmed with girls. There's no competition. So
Right. It's a good ratio, right?
And you have social proof because they're like, oh, this is a male model. You made it. You made the cut. And
Right.
so it's really easy to not even game, just to meet girls backstage. So.
Okay. Got it. What's it like being in that world, especially dating in that world? Is it different than kind of your standard club life, or what is the dating scene like within the modeling world?
It's different depending on the group you hang out with, the agency that represents you, and the city that you're in. For me, I'm just to set the record straight. I still run my own internet company, and I do this part time.
Right.
I think the people that do it full time, it's a little bit different because they have to worry about where the money's coming in, and so they're a little bit more professional. The part time models are maybe less less professional. I don't know. Depends on their personal preference.
Is it like porn in the sense that like they only date like so porn actors will only date generally in that circle because there's so much of a stigma outside of that circle, right? So few people can handle dating a porn star if they're not already in that industry. So they date within the industry. Is modeling similar to that?
It's not like that because we don't have that stigma. As a matter of fact, we have the opposite stigma, right? If you're a model, in today's society, models are looked like something to aspire to. So
Right.
it's different.
Is it difficult though because the average guy, say if it's a female model, right?
Yeah.
The average guy doesn't understand that world, right? Is that a factor there?
Well, these girls tend to find guys who are cool. Like either they know the guys from before and they're friends and they trust them, or they are just comfortable with certain types of guys. It's not always female models dating male models. Some of them are really professional sometimes, and also like there's a big age difference. Like for me, the male models are usually in their mid-20s and late 20s, and then the female models are like in their teens. So there's a little bit of an age gap there too. I've dated a few of the girls. Usually they're in the early 20s, and it was fine. They're open to dating guy models. I think that a lot of them are also in relationships all the time. Like they it's like they have so much demand for them that they're always in cycle, and so when they're single, usually they can pick from their core circle of guys, and they're usually single very
Infrequently,
for a
right?
limited amount of time. Yeah. So
Yeah.
most of the time, I'm usually friends with them until they're single, and then I'll hang out with them for a bit.
To swoop in.
Merry-go-round, yeah.
Right. What would you say? What are some things that like most guys really don't understand about that world, or about models, or especially about dating models? Like, what would you say are some things that would like surprise most guys who haven't been exposed to that?
I'm like low key, right? But if you're like dating Adriana Lima or girls who are traveling nonstop because they're so famous, that's a different level. Like I think that's even I'm not there yet. Normal girl models who work in LA or just like they work regularly but they're not well known. I think most guys assume that they're like supermodels, and I think supermodels is like less than 1% of all the models combined. Right. So most models are just like it's a job for them. It's another career. They work hard at it. They get paid pretty well, but you got to remember the payments come in lump sums over a long period of time. So she may not, she might get 20 grand per gig, but that 20 grand might come every 3 months or 6 months, right?
Right.
So yeah, a lot of guys I think put them on pedestals. They assume that because of celebrity culture, they assume that every girl model who's made it is like traveling on jets and nice clothes and shit. And it's just not shit. It's not shit.
Right. One of the things that I kind of go over with my guys a lot is a lot of my guys have. We'll go over like goals, like who are you most attracted to? Who do you want to date? And a lot of guys, it's weird. A lot of guys just think that they want to date a supermodel in terms of like a legit supermodel, like that's their goal in this, right? Not realizing, and I break down the lifestyle that they're going to live, especially if they're not a supermodel themselves. So like if you were to date, say, Adriana Lima, or you were to date like an actual supermodel, right? What would your lifestyle look like, right? And a lot of these guys think it'd be great because I'd have this hot girl, and they don't realize, what your lifestyle would really be look like is you would basically be like Paris Hilton's Pomeranian, right? Like you would just be flying around the world following this girl around, and everyone's like, who the hell are you? And, oh, he's just a boyfriend. Oh, okay, forget him. Like, whatever. Like, you're always just like this little puppy dog following this girl around. Everyone's fawning over this girl. She's hanging out with models and like famous people, and everyone's like, who the hell are you again? Oh, yeah? Oh, okay, cool. Like, you're just this like nobody just tagging along, right? And that's basically your lifestyle. It's hard to hold down a job for you because, you're always traveling unless you don't travel and you just want her to hang out with male models by herself, right? And a lot of guys don't just realize that reality is not the same reality as the one in their fantasy, where everything is perfect and like I'm Brad Pitt and she's Angelina Jolie. Like, unless you are already famous or something, like chances are you're going to be more of a lapdog than you are an equivalent male star.
There are female models who grew up in a small town who got scouted, and now she's living in a big city, and she has those small town family values, and all she wants to do is make a lot of money before she turns 30 or whatever her career starts to dwindle, and actually settle down. Those type of girls every guy wants her. So
Right.
it's like a light out the door, man. So like,
Those are the unicorns, right?
yeah, yeah, they do exist, but they are very good girls, and usually they also are smart enough to realize that for guys, if you're a girl, imagine put yourself in her shoes. You need a time frame to qualify the guys as to their true personality, right? Because a lot of times we fake it. So
Right.
she has this like qualification process that spans several weeks, to test the guys, and most guys fail. Most guys get too needy. I just did a shoot last weekend with a female model friend, and she told me that her ex-boyfriend, who she's currently dating someone else, but she broke up with him a couple of months ago. I'm like, oh, you're single now? She's like, no, I'm dating someone else. I'm like, great. She's like, my ex-boyfriend was crazy. She broke into my house and he threatened to kill our hamster, like the hamster that he got for her. And I'm like, that's crazy. Like, see, she's like, yeah, I know. I'm like, but I'm like, I kind of understand because she's beautiful. She's probably one of the most gorgeous girls I've seen in person, and the guy's 20 years old. He's like this dorky looking dude who got lucky in high school. They met in high school. They fell in love.
Right.
And she's probably like the hottest girl he'll ever date.
Right.
When they broke up, he pretty much went psycho. Like, he was crazy, But to make a long story short, the whole history of them being together, I remember seeing her at castings and stuff. Like, he never really realized like the value differential between him and her, and he was always like you said, in the beggar mentality, right? He's always the I'm following her around mentality, and that never lasts. Especially with young teenage models that have a career ahead of her, you can't keep up. Like, at some point, even if she loves you, at some point you have to let her go because she's destined for more than just that, right? And you, as a guy, you have to realize that as a man, you have to go on your own journey to become the guy you wish to be. And only then, until then, can you guys even have a chance of being together. Otherwise, it would just be selfish of you to hold her back.
Right.
And most guys can't think, like, they don't realize that, or they're not unselfish enough to realize that. And then the breakups are just like, you hear stories like this all the time, like from, oh my God, my boyfriend's stalking me now at every fashion show. Like, it's
Right. Yeah. I mean, I empathize, like you said, because in that guy's head, he's kind of realizing at this point that he'll never date a girl like this again. Most
that
likely.
Guy's head, he won the lottery. So it's like, if you
and you got to take it away now.
Exactly. What happens to lottery winners? You give a homeless guy a lottery ticket and he wins. You hear the stories, right? Like, they fuck it up because they don't have the foundation. They don't have the fundamentals to manage wealth. Yeah. These guys don't have the fundamental mindset to realize what it takes to be a man of value and to live a life of centeredness and actually truly be happy, as opposed to leeching off of someone else. So they crash and burn when that happens.
Right. What would you say are some of like the fears and challenges that come up when guys are say talking to these girls or interacting with models or just really attractive women? Like, what's been your experience with that?
This happened to me too when I started going out and trying to meet girls in clubs. We call these club girls. We talked about this. Club girls are girls who, like my life princesses. They are always the hottest girl at a club. She's always in a skinny dress that her vagina is always falling out. These girls, these are club girls. And then you have the model girls who sometimes are club girls, but sometimes are not. And so these are always girls of exceptional beauty. She has a lot of social value. She knows how to wear makeup. She knows how to, in addition to physical gifts, accentuate those gifts through illusions of makeup and grandeur and social proof. And so these are the hardest girls to talk to. And I think a lot of guys, when they first talk to them, even myself included, would flinch a little bit. Like, I would, kind of exaggerate my facial expressions, or it's kind of hard to look at her in the face and treat her like a normal person. And so the only way to get around that is through practice, to talk to a lot of them, and then getting to befriend them, even to realize that they're just people and that their beautiful looks are just that. They're beautiful looks, but that doesn't define who they are. Ultimately, these are the vehicles we travel in life. And so as you get to know her more as a person and you start interacting with her in a natural way, like you would with a friend or your sister, then the illusion starts to come down a bit. Like, you coached me when I was learning this. You asked me, how many 9-to-10s have you talked to? And I'm like, oh, 1 or 2 last month. And you're like, okay, well, I'll make that like 20, right? Because otherwise, they'll always be unicorns. You always think like, they're a certain way, but they're not.
Right. What would you say, in your experience, what's the difference? Like, you described the kind of the hot club girl and the model. What are the big differences there? Because to most guys looking at those girls, they're the same girl. But a lot of times they're not. a lot of times, ironically, the hot club girl is trying to be the model girl, and she's not doing a very good job of it, right? What's been your experience with the difference between those two types?
You know, it's weird. It's a tough question to answer. I will say that there are similarities among all 9s and 10s, or so to call, like girls of exceptional beauty, girls of exceptional beauty, excuse me, because by nature of her beauty and then by nature of how our society currently works, she's put under a lot of social pressure, and there's certain behavior patterns that come out naturally, like a tougher screening process and a more aversion to guys who leech off of her, right? The similar way that a guy who has a lot of money would be afraid of people who use him for his money. But to answer your question, the club girl is usually someone who's not like she's in my definition at least, she's someone who clubs too much. She's usually the girl who seeks validation. She's usually dating a guy who's rich or who has a boat here in San Diego who takes her on these trips.
Right.
The model girl, for me, at least my definition, the good one, is one who cares about her career, who wants to make it on her own. She usually wants to have money coming in for her family, and she's thinking about more long term about how she is going to drive her career. And even though she's young, she understands like these are the things that are gifted to her, but also her responsibility. To me, that's the difference between a model girl and a club girl. And not all models like that. Some models are just like, oh my God, I'm gifted, I'm beautiful, and I'm going to party hard, right? But the ones that really make it, I think, do have some semblance of how to grow their career and what the long-term goal looks like.
It kind of sounds like the difference between the kind of the Jersey Shore type guy who's in the club all the time versus the guy who owns the club, right? Like, or the guy who has a stake in it or something. Like, they're both in the club. They both go to the club a lot sometimes, but like, it's a different mentality because one guy is looking at it in terms of validation and another guy's looking at it in terms of this is kind of a career potential, or this is what I'm using what talents that I have or what resources I have to grow. Like,
some people just like to party, and I know girls who don't go to clubs, who don't like the female model who actually is the clients want to book, that want to give money to. She's not clubbing at 3 a.m. She's going to sleep at 10 because she wants to look good for the shoot tomorrow.
Exactly, right? Exactly.
She doesn't have time to be drinking up, and then drinking and smoking and those things limit your shelf life as a female model, especially as a female model, because of the limited shelf life that you have. And so, yeah, I mean, this is just my take. There are counterexamples to everything. There are party girls who are good girls. There are model girls who party hard. So, yeah, generally speaking, that's what I've seen so far.
Okay. On the, I guess from a broader perspective, societally, I guess, what are your thoughts on the idea of, I guess, our society paying so much attention to female beauty, right? And that kind of inherently leads us into the idea of kind of objectifying women. What are your thoughts on that?
In the words of Hugh Hefner, women are sex objects. They are so much. They're so much more than that. But one dimension of them is that they're sex objects, and if they were not, then we wouldn't have the next generation. So, and the media has given us this kind of. There's a question of like, does the media create this image for us, or does it just feed us what we want to a extreme degree, right? And I think there's a little bit of both. But yeah, the obsession with beauty is interesting. I think that I have to admit, like even for me, growing up, there was a certain gravitation towards beauty, and I think that will always be a universal desire. So I think that's fine. I just think that in addition to that, you should have more stuff too, like the desire for beauty, the desire to have a beautiful girl, but also the desire to have a fulfilling life and to help others too. And so unfortunately, once you acquire that beauty, then you realize what it is and what it isn't, and therefore you start to realize that whatever you seek in life, whether be it happiness or peace or whatever sex, it has to do more with just the way she looks. And that's something that guys will learn, I think, as they learn to become good with dating and with women.
Yeah, the irony, I think, from my perspective, is that the guys that objectify women, right, they kind of look at women as just purely sex objects. That tends to go down the more experience you have, right? Like the guys that objectify women the most are the guys that have very little experience with them, right? Generally speaking. Because the more experience you have with them, the more you see their flaws and the more you see them as people, because you realize that she's not that 10 in the club all the time. That's an image, right? That's
Right.
a thing. And the more experience you have with that, the more you see her as a person because you see her flaws, you see what she looks like without makeup, you see when she annoys you and all this other stuff. And it's like that old phrase, for every 10 you see in the club or every really hot girl you see, there's some guy out there who's sick of her shit, right? Like it reverse objectifies it. With experience comes, I guess, understanding that she's a real person. So it's kind of an ironic way to go about that.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's a relationship between two people, even two celebrities. You know, Russell Brand talked about, you know, with him and Katy Perry. He's like, well, in public, she's Katy Perry and Russell Brand, but in private, we're just two people trying to work it out, right? So,
Right.
yeah, that ultimately that's the case. I think there is also like a boundary where there is the world where you can like be sex objects and enjoy it, and I think that boundary can be created, like such as a Playboy Mansion or whatnot, and it's perfectly fine to enjoy that too. But you have to kind of separate those different dimensions and realize that there are different dimensions, and there's times you exist in either one, right? So,
Right.
yeah.
Now, what would you say? What would you say to guys who kind of have a limitation, like this belief limitation, as far as looks go? Like, how important do you think looks are in dating, especially for guys, especially in this world?
When I was 21, I thought that looks were the only thing. I thought that because I wasn't good looking, that I would never get the girl I wanted. So that was a big deal for me. And then as I got older, I realized that it was your behavior pattern, and that you can still look good even if you don't have physical traits. And you can show them a picture of my college. Like, it's interesting. Like, I was same height, same physical attributes. Maybe I'm a little bit stronger now. You know, same hair, hairstyle different, but I got no girls. I was 6'2". I was a virgin at 23, and I had no girls. So, you know, your looks are, as a guy, it's not the most important thing. You just have to make sure that it's taken care of. So your grooming, your style, your attire, the way you move, the way you walk, the way you express yourself. That stuff ultimately is what's gonna attract girls. The way you move through life, as Zan would say, that stuff is gonna attract the women that you really want, more so than your physical attributes. Although there are situations where that becomes a limitation, but that only becomes a limitation because you can't out-limit yourself, and so then it becomes a limitation based on the way you think. If that makes sense.
Okay. What about specifically in the modeling world, or in, you know, kind of this world where you're dating very attractive women, right? How important then are looks? Is that different than kind of just the average everyday guy?
You know, it's hard to say. Because I don't really, the answer is I don't really know, because the girls I've dated on dates and stuff, they tell me that it doesn't really matter. But my ex-girlfriend she models, and she told me that that for some reason she didn't care how I looked, but that if I wasn't tall enough, that she wouldn't have dated me or something like that. Like, okay. I was like, hey, if I like, you know, I'm Asian, like, is that a big, like, this is after like a long time, right? Like, we're already dating. I'm like, no, seriously, like, the Asian thing, does that bother you at all, or your family? She's like, no, my family, maybe, you know, they're from the Midwest. But she's like, no, it doesn't. I actually kind of like that. And then she's like, no, but I don't know. Maybe I'm being superficial, but for me, height's a big issue. Or like, that's what she said. And then there's certain things that girls can't get over. Right. And then, but it's the same thing for us too. Like, there's certain things that we can't get over. Like, we have to have a girl who's not fat, or like right?
Right.
Yeah, I think to be real with you, I think female models have a certain idea of what the guy would look like, but I think for girls in particular, the gender, that idea is constantly fluid. And so, like, a guy who has a really strong identity can overcome that. Whereas I think for a girl, it's more difficult. Like, if Rosie O'Donnell was the most interesting, loving person in the world, like, would you want to have sex with her? I don't know. That's a tough one.
Yeah, I feel like from my experience in this, kind of that for girls, especially like very attractive women, because they're kind of rated in terms of their attractiveness, their kind of worth instinctively on a biological level is from reproduction, or in this case, attractiveness, which is the same thing, then an attractive girl is the equivalent of a really powerful guy. So that powerful guy can have various elements that make him powerful, right? Not just physically the power, but like he could be a big guy, he could be a rich guy or a wealthy guy, or a guy that controls a lot, or a guy that's a leader, or a guy that's very charismatic. Powerful in the sense being something that he brings to the table. And it feels very much like, you know, a girl who brings a lot of beauty to the table is then going to be attracted to a guy who brings a lot to the table. And in different scenarios, he could bring different things to the table, and there's a lot of variation on that. But he can't be a guy who doesn't bring anything to the table and expect to date a girl who brings a ton to the table. It would be the equivalent of like a male model who's rich and powerful and owns a country, you know, dating a fat homeless woman. Like, it's not going to happen, right? She doesn't bring enough to the table to kind of make up that differential.
I know it sounds so superficial of us, but I mean, like, we always hear this story of like the prince falling in love with the poor homeless girl, right? Or
right.
like the girl in the slums, but that girl's always beautiful in Disney movies.
Exactly, right,
You know?
right,
So
yeah.
like,
I mean, I think it's the equivalent of the really hot girl falling in love with the equivalent, right? She falls in love with maybe the guy who's not attractive, but like Salma Hayek, right? Her guy's not that fucking hot, but he's a billionaire, right? So I think that's the kind of equivalent of like the guy who falls in love with like the homeless princess.
there are counterexamples, like Hugh, the guy who plays Wolverine. What's his name?
Hugh Jackman.
Hugh Jackman's wife isn't that hot. Antonio Banderas, one of the best, like really, most beautiful men in the world, as rated by People magazine. His wife is, overweight. So
Wait, who's Antonio Banderas' wife?
she's this Latin girl who's like overweight, and even Christian Bale, his wife isn't even that hot. Batman. So
Interesting. Okay.
There are counterexamples, and I think that we can't be so certain of this, because love does happen, and when love happens, there are a lot of other variables that just get swept out of the way. So I don't want to say this definitively, but based on my experience, at least with girls who are exceptional in terms of physical beauty, she has to. There has to be time. There has to be time for that to happen. Like falling in love, you need access to be in her presence, and you need her to experience you. And as long as the experience can happen, I think anything can happen. But first, you need access. And so, as a guy, it's like, how do I get access to these girls? Even if I'm not accessing them in a way where they want to date me, I'm still accessing them where I'm spending time with them and they're getting to know me, right? So
Right.
that can happen. And I've seen guys who hung out with girls who weren't that attractive in college, but they somehow fell in love. And so these things do happen. I think that they go against the natural forces of a capitalistic, more superficial type society that America has become. But it do happen. And so for us we can't judge that much. So let's see what happens. You never know.
Right. For a lot of guys, so you've seen firsthand, and I've seen obviously through all of a lot of my students and from myself and from our coaches and everything. There's so much that guys can gain from working on kind of their fashion, their style, and everything. But like so few guys do it. Every time I'll go and I'll give a talk at a local group, or sometimes a big group, I'll look at the audience, and this is 300 men trying to improve themselves, and they're all dressing like they're homeless almost. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, these are guys wearing jeans from the 80s with tennis shoes. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, that's the easiest thing to fix.
Yeah.
Like, that versus fixing your sense of charisma, it's a lot easier to change your jeans, right?
Yes.
So I'm sure you see that as well, where there's like kind of there's a resistance to kind of working on this or to change the style, even though it's so effective, right? What do you think that comes from? What do you think is preventing guys from working on that or holding guys back?
I think it's a like on a larger scale, social narrative scale. It's an issue of like education. It's like guys don't realize, like, women's magazines get it, right? Women's magazines, like, you have to be hot, you got to lose weight, lose that tummy in 15 days. 15 tips to make your man happy in bed. Like,
Right.
Marie Claire, and those guys get it. Like, they understand what women want and they give it to them. The guy GQ stuff, it's they don't quite get it yet, or maybe men, because of our ego, you can't address it directly, and so therefore they have to address it indirectly by saying, if you get this watch, if you look GQ, then you get a better job. But oh, by the way, the hot chick comes with that too. So
Right.
they can't say that right away, and I think because of our egos that we can't admit it to ourselves, and also like it's hard for a guy to say, you know what, I don't look good. I need to improve. I need to improve. And I think that to some guys, it's like they're admitting defeat. And there's a lot of inherent fears associated with changing up your image, and that most guys aren't even aware of or can't even articulate that they're really afraid of those things. So I think that's one of the big reasons why most guys don't work on their image.
I also feel like for women, it's a good thing if like a woman works on being hot. Like if she gets hot, right? Like that's a good thing. Her friends congratulate her. Like she feels good about herself. Like she, shows it off, whatever. But I think for guys, it's kind of the opposite, right? A guy who's trying to look hot, everyone makes fun of him. Guys think he's gay. Like there's kind of a reverse stigma to that.
Yeah, well, in America, looking hot is like taking steroids and getting muscle, and these guys do get laid. Unfortunately, they get called douchebags, but they also get laid. So,
well, like a guy, for example, who like takes care of his skin, right? Like there's definitely a stigma attached to that.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like don't be gay, but then being gay gets you girls. So being gay gets you gay in quotations. So yeah, there is a big stigma to that, and I think that it's unfortunate. But I would say even being called metrosexual, at least you're getting results. You're starting to understand how to look attractive and maybe add more masculinity to it, especially in the U.S. And that'll get you results as opposed to not dressing well at all. That's like the worst thing. Like not knowing that you dress bad is like the worst. It's like you don't even know.
You're just completely unaware.
Yeah,
do you think that kind of seeing the evolution, right, and seeing kind of the generations kind of go by in terms of American culture, right? Do you think that men are dressing better over time or worse over time, or it's just different?
It's different because there was a time in America where there was a little bit of class to society as well. Especially like I would say after the Great Depression, like there was a character building phase. There was guys out in the field working. They understood the value of hard work. They understood the value of being a man, and so those commercials that came with that exemplified a raw masculinity that to today's society is no longer there. However, fashion trends have evolved as well, and more people have access to cheaper clothes and mass production. So, things are different now. But at the same time, a lot of guys, because there's so many options, they don't know how to look good. They don't know what to choose. I think they're overwhelmed a little bit, or they're just not aware of what options are out there. So I would say it's different. The guys that dress well now are definitely more in tune with trends are changing faster and faster. Just like we're more in tune with technology, I think we change faster and faster, and so that's better, I guess.
Okay, right. What do you think? If you had to identify like the top 3 mistakes you see, kind of the average guy out there walking down the street that he's making with regard to style or fashion, right? What would that be?
Depends on the city. I think that fit is so important. Most guys don't realize that. Like they don't get measured or they don't understand what fit means. Fit is the adherence of the clothing item to your body type, and to have something that is synchronized with your body, right? To the movement of your body. And a lot of guys also try to copy other people, but they don't really know who to copy. They copy their friends. They try to copy what they see in ads. They try to copy things they see in magazines. Yet they haven't calibrated properly to how their body looks and how they look. And so that's one of the other big mistakes, to copy without reference, right? If you want to copy something, copy it, but have the reference of where you copied it from, what's different about that person, and how that applies to you.
Okay.
Mindless copying creates a lot of mistakes. And I think that there's a general lack of awareness of what your image can do for you. I think that there's a general lack of understanding of the ability of looking visually a certain way and eliciting certain responses from people, be it professional or romantic. And so the power that you have from being aware that improving your style can get you better dates, more texts, more attraction from women, more smoother social interactions. That awareness is still being built up. I don't think it's quite there yet.
Okay, right. If we went kind of nitty gritty into brass tacks, so things that specifically, like tactical mistakes guys are making, right? So you talked about fit. What are some other things that like the guys are actually wearing or not wearing as far as that goes, that are actually like holding them back or making them look like crap or whatever? I know we addressed fit. Fit's a good one too. Can you expand also on fit in terms of what is the actual issue? Are guys wearing stuff too tight? Are guys wearing stuff that, their shirts are too short? Like, what do you see the most in fit?
Guys are wearing shirts that are too big for them most of the time.
Right.
They don't go too small because they're afraid of being called gay, so they go
right.
too big.
Mm-hmm.
American guys. And the guys don't know what hairstyle to choose, so they end up just getting a normal haircut that don't fit them or don't stand out. Mm-hmm. Guys, they don't know how to coordinate a complete look. So they'll buy a shirt that's really expensive that maybe looks good, but then they'll have like pants that don't match that shirt's color, or design is completely different design than the shirt. They don't know how to complete a look. Guys are clueless about. They're usually clueless about things like accessories and shoes. Like they don't know how to accessorize. Women are so good at accessorizing. Mm-hmm. And guys, again, they think it's gay or whatnot. They don't know how to accessorize, and so they have no practice. And when they do, they put on too many bracelets or too many necklaces. It looks out of place.
Right.
Guys tan too much. I think
some guys, I think.
Some guys, I think, over tan
from a certain region of the country.
Yeah. They're trying to, like in America. There's this over masculine like social narrative that's pushing people towards like you have to be super macho or you're a man or you're not cool at all or like you're not sexy at all. And I think that's such a one-dimensional way of looking at it. There's so many different types of sexuality and sexual archetypes. And unfortunately, guys don't have any other guidance. And so they're like, dude, I gotta take steroids, I gotta work out and become a Marine and fucking be awesome. Yeah, you could do that, but that might not suit your natural personality, and it's okay. There are other ways. There are other archetypes that are very attractive. There are writers, there are artists who are naturally masculine and attracted to women. You just have to find out what those are. You don't have to be the next guy on steroids. So.
Right. I'll also say from first-hand experience that just enlisting in the Marines doesn't necessarily cure all your problems. Right, exactly. I wish it did, but it doesn't. It doesn't actually cure all your problems. It just makes you a really socially awkward, weird guy who works out a lot and knows how to shoot guns, and that girls still don't want to hang out with. So
hopefully you learn better. Like I think one thing I regretted not going into the Army in my country was that my dad told me it helped him develop discipline. And I taught him he made really good friends. Like there was the sense of like, these are my brothers and we're part of a tribe. And so I think that aspect is great in terms of.
Yeah. I went in because of kind of a sense of obligation, and because my family line kind of comes from a lot of military people. But in the back of my head, I also thought it would like cure all of the dating problems, and I was so disappointed when I put the uniform on. I knew I looked good, and then nothing happened.
Right,
it didn't fix all of my problems. What happened?
Yeah, so dude, I got into Google. I'm professionally awesome. Like, where are the girls? What's going on?
Yeah. Yeah. What are some things? So tell me, let's say a couple of things, or maybe a few things off the top of your head that you see guys wearing that they shouldn't. Like very, very specific things. Like I'll get it started. I think if you're wearing jeans that are light colored, unless you really know what you're doing, you should trade them in for darker colored jeans, right? If you're wearing any type of shoe that you could go run sprints in or kind of like distance running in, if you're wearing that shoe with jeans, there's a problem. Don't wear that, right? Like so what are some things, some of your tips that you have for things guys should not be wearing?
Generally speaking, I focus on principles rather than tips, just to be clear. But since you asked, guys who wear a t-shirt on their dress shirts, or t-shirts that are darker than a dress shirt. So you have a black t-shirt and a white dress shirt. Your t-shirt's going to show.
Okay.
I see that sometimes. I see guys who wear like office clothing, like khakis and like oversized dress shirts, and they just look like they're from The Office, like the show.
Right.
It's just too much. I think guys who have glasses can get cooler style glasses. They don't have to look so nerdy. I think that a lot of guys can really pick a hairstyle that really tells a story as opposed to just a regular hairstyle. I think that's one of the coolest things you can change. I think guys don't know how to wear leather jackets that well. They overpay for it, or they buy a size that's too big. It looks a little bit out of place. I think guys don't understand leather that well.
Can you talk a little bit about leather real quick? Because I'm really interested in that as well. It's a thing where you could spend a lot of money, and if you don't know what you're doing, it can still look like crap.
I'm wearing Zara's leather jacket right now. It cost me $150. I have friends who buy leather jackets for $1,000, 500, 1,000. I don't think money is correlated to style points. I can talk about that all day, and I think that leather shoes and boots, like, they don't quite understand it. You have to try it a few times, and they don't quite understand what it communicates and what it means. And so, the first time I put on my leather jacket, I felt a bit out of place. I was like, "This is not me." And then the more I wore it, the more I became comfortable with it. And you have to understand that it takes courage to change, to say, like, this is part of myself that I like, and these are parts of my identity that I want to change. And I am okay that I'm afraid to, but that I know that I want to, and I will take the effort to do so. I think that is more manly than ignorance. So that's the core message I'm trying to get to guys. Instead of focusing on quick tips, like a lot of GQ stuff, don't buy these jeans, buy this. Focus on the principles of classic style. That will never go wrong, and you can always come up with your own little tips and identities once you master the core principles of what it means to have style,
Right. Okay. For those guys that I guess are in the Western world, right? Where would you recommend they shop? Like, that's one of the first things that, like, we're just, as guys, we're just completely clueless unless someone tells us, "Hey, shop here," and like, I shopped at, like, Marshall's, for those of you guys in the Western world, right? Yeah. Until someone said at the time, right, stop shopping there and go to Nordstrom's, or go to, at the time it was Structure, now it's Express, right? I think Structure honestly was cooler, but people started pointing me in the right direction, and that was a big help for me, because it's really hard to be really fashionable at Marshall's, right? It's tough. You can do it, but it requires a lot more expertise than if you say.
But your costs are lower, so your cost for your mistakes is low. So it's like a affiliate campaign. You're spending less money to make mistakes, right? So that's
right. Yeah. So what would you recommend for guys, like guys in, say, the United States? Where should they be shopping? If you could give some.
I can't tell a guy where to shop, but I can tell you what I do. So for me, I shop for maximum style points for the minimum amount of money, because I'm Asian and I'm cheap. So I'm joking, but my whole idea is, like, how do I get the max amount of style points for my purposes, whether it be to attract a girl, or to advance my career, or to express my identity in a way that's congruent to who I want to be and where I want to go in life. So for me, I shop at brands that are a little bit less expensive, but still considered high tier, but doesn't cost like $3,000 a shirt, like Burberry, like, just crazy, right?
Sure.
I think those are like scams, those are really well tailored branding scams. But anyway, I shop at Zara's, I shop at Guess, I shop at Target. Has some great designed shirts. Like, Target's awesome for boxers, socks. I never had a girl not sleep with me because of my socks.
Right.
Or where I got my socks,
Right.
I shop at Buckle. I shop at, there's a place called Pop Icon that they have different types of, like, more alternative brands that they put together. I shop at Urban Outfitters. They have great accessories. I shop at Black Piece Now, which is a Japanese store in San Francisco. There's a little Japantown. They have, like, all these really cool Asian themed, not Asian themed, just like Japanese designers jewelry and accessory that's really cool. And so I have, like, the normal stuff like Zara's, Guess, and I have, like, vintage stores that I go to that over time I've sought them out and figured out where to buy them. And even online, like, you can find very specific brands that suit you. So, but in the beginning, go out to the store and have a feel, like, experience what the store is like, and get a sense of what it feels like, to the smell, feel the texture, etc.
Right. I would encourage guys that are listening on this, that are trying to work on their style to both obviously look at some of the examples that you have on your website, Seduce with Style, and you'll have, like, the lookbook and the comparison of what looks good and stuff. I think that's a really important thing. I have all my guys actually make a lookbook, and we take a 3-ring binder. We have we have these clear sheet protectors that we put in that binder, and then we go and we buy a GQ or whatever, and we start ripping ads out. Things that look interesting and putting it in there, because if you don't know what you're doing, you have no instincts on this. You have no idea what to look for, and by looking at that and getting a sense of and a feel for that, you start to develop those instincts and kind of those ideas of what you like and what looks good. Even if, so I tell a lot of guys, some of the things on that lookbook I'm never actually going to wear, but it's going to be kind of an inspiration. Like, there's a picture I have where this guy's wearing like neon orange socks, right? And so some of those things I won't wear, but I put it in because it's interesting, and it kind of fuels that creativity, and that's something that on the creative side, that's something that I struggled with a lot, because I was a programmer and I was very kind of left-brained, and so a lot of that stuff helped on that as well. And of course, your book Seduce with Style was huge as well for all of my guys and for my stuff and everything. Just being able to have a resource where there's a kind of a guide that walks you through the fundamentals of what works, what doesn't, why this works, where you should kind of go, and how you should develop, especially your own kind of sense of style, and what looks good on you, and what's specifically tailored to your own kind of identity, and your own sense of improving that sense of style and fashion. So Vince, what's next for you? Like, what's on the horizon for you, and where can guys find out more about you?
Yeah, seducingwithstyle.com. Check it out. And I will say one last thing, which is, you asked me this earlier before we recorded. If a guy just worked on the style and nothing else, what would happen?
Right.
And that's fine. I think that if you did that, like, even a guy who has learned nothing about dating, you can still take him, have him dress a certain way, and he can start feeling. At least then, the first step is like having the belief that things can change. And unfortunately, we're very visual, and so when you change something visually, there tends to be an impact, and so your internal compass usually follows in suit, right? Mm-hmm. So style is one of the fastest ways you can change your image and your outer look and your self-esteem, and then you start believing that it's possible. If you do it right, you start getting compliments, you start believing that it's possible. You start seeing different interactions you have with people of the world, things of the world. And it's like your avatar in your computer game, right? It's like, oh, if I change my avatar, these stat attributes change. And so and you start to see how the world works. And I think that even if you just worked on it alone, it would be great. Obviously, ideally, you want to work in conjunction with everything. But it's one of the fastest ways you can change that doesn't require a ton of work.
Right. Yeah, I agree, man. I know for me, when I started to experiment with different things, especially like a lot of guys know me because of the Mohawk, right? That kind of avatar that was created was an experiment. It was a dare, really. It was a friend who said, we were screwing around, and I was like, what if I went out like this? And he laughed, and he's like, you should do it. And I thought he was joking, and I kind of dismissed it, and he was like, no, really, like, go out and do that. Let's see what happens. And I was like, are you serious? Like, I can't go out like this. And he's like, well, what's the worst that can happen? We'll go out, and then it'll be a conversation piece, and we'll all make fun of you and laugh at you, right? And so I was like, all right, screw it, let's try it, right? And I was very much in that phase at that point of trying new things. And some of the things worked, some of them didn't. But what that created was, I guess, the beginning of a personal sense of style, where I started to mold things to kind of fit the sense of, what I was kind of projecting. And that thing specifically was because it's so out there, because it's so polarizing. People love it or they hate it. And everyone thinks, oh, like, a lot of guys will see it, a lot of guys will think everyone loves it. And they don't realize that there's just as many people that hate it, but it's very polarizing. And once you start to get on a nightly basis, you start to get women or men or people approaching you, complimenting you all the time. Now, there's an equal number of people hating on you, too, in the shadows, but you start to get people complimenting all the time. You start to get women. I've had women actually say they want to go home with me, just right off the bat. That's their opening line, right? And it starts to change how you think and how you feel about yourself. And that, along with, the work that you do on your belief system and on kind of reframing the limiting beliefs that you have, it all kind of starts coming together. And that was a big shift for me as well.
Totally, man, and that's great that that became your icon. That's part of your personality. Like, the yellow jumpsuit was for Bruce Lee. The Mohawk is for you.
Yeah.
And that stuff takes experimentation. And the first time a girl says, "Hey, what are you doing later? Do you want to come with me?" Or I remember the first time for me it was, "Hey, you look hot. for an Asian guy. She said later on. Hey, you look hot. Like, what are you doing later? Like, you like, oh, it's possible now. She just pretty much judged me just based on the way I look, because of the way I dress. So
Yeah.
it is possible. And once you realize that, then you start to realize how important it is. We're just basically taking what's already out there, the natural flow of the universe, and you're basically riding a wave. You know, these things already happen. People have been polarizing since, the beginning of time, and they will continue to be polarizing. What you can do is then take that energy and use it to your advantage. So have them say bad things about you, but also have the exact opposite emotion, like you said, of them feeling positive, strong attraction to you, and leverage that to whatever it is you want, be it sex or relationships. Use that natural force that's already there, as opposed to denying it, being closed off, and not being open to the idea that these forces are already in play anyway.
Right, absolutely. Before we wrap, Vince, I wanted you to talk real briefly about this new system of modules that you have in the Seduce Style 3.0, and some of the guys have kind of looked at 2.0, and some of the guys haven't had any experience at all. What's different about that? What's changed, and how do you use those modules to help guys develop their own sense of style?
Yeah, it's a good question. By the way, everyone that's in your program, like, I already gave you a login. Log in and take a look, man. Like, that's fine.
Sure.
And I provide that for you because you've been great supporter of the style stuff I'm doing. For 3.0, we'll have video modules of me. We'll have video modules of me interviewing girl models and asking them how they get into relationships and how they date. We'll have I have a lot of case studies of guys who before and after pictures. I have exact methodologies for how they copy style properly. And I have different modules on epiphanies and what I've learned over the years coaching people. And it's really basically everything is there: video, infographics, audio, and how to start relationships, body language, sub-communication. So you really can't go wrong if you have access to all that stuff. If you want additional coaching, it's going to shorten your learning curve really fast, because then I can pinpoint exactly what's out there. But the current module itself, all the materials are for you to master over time at your own pace.
Awesome. I'll include a link here in the bottom too on where they can find that. But thank you for joining us, Vince. It's been very revealing, very informational. Where can guys find you? What's the website again?
Seducingwithstyle.com.
Okay, great.
Thanks, man.
Thank you for coming on and sharing your wisdom with us.
Thanks, Darren.
All right, man.